research showing that 60% of founders, when they've had big exits, 7, 8, 9-figure exits, 60% of them are depressed within 6 months. I am walking evidence that your life can be changed in an instant. So I've become a specialist in helping people overcome self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, and crippling self-doubt. If compliments make you feel uncomfortable, you want to look at that. But no, it's darker than that.
Why do people self-sabotage in the first place?
I saw it enough to know that I was a common denominator, and I was able to locate this part in my psychology that if it could have pushed a button and ruined everything for me, it wanted to. If we could clear away that self-opposition, so you just wake up and you feel super positive and super grateful and super aligned, you have to create space and time for that younger version of you to admit the truth. That's what restores its innocence. But to create real change around self-sabotage, there's a very different set of things that you need to do, and they have to be done in a very specific order. Otherwise, you get one of those things where you actually...
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Marked Podcast. I'm your host, Vin, and today we're joined by my friend, Tom Fortis Mayor. Welcome to the show.
Very pleased to be here, Vin.
Dude, I am excited. As I was joking around with my producer before, I was telling him, I'm like, Tom is the me of England, so we're going to have a great episode today. The guy is fascinating. He's got such an amazing, I guess we could say it's a niche, but maybe not, because like every really good entrepreneur and business owner, you should know what it is that you're doing at a calculated level, and that's what this guy's got going on. So Tom, without letting me hype up the audience way too much, could you please tell them a little about who you are, what you do, and how you're doing it?
Thanks, Vin. Yeah. So I've been in the world of psychology for 25 years, started as a kind of standard therapist. My primary training was in dealing with the unconscious, so I was trained in clinical hypnotherapy and learned huge amounts about behavior change there. But I was working across the board with the general public, kind of fixing anything I could get my hands on, really. But over the years, as you know, you end up kind of getting more skilled, and a niche kind of finds you very often, and that was what happened for me too. So I became a specialist in helping people overcome self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, and crippling self-doubt. And so that has been my absolute obsession. I didn't know that I was someone that sabotaged. And when I realized that I had been my own worst enemy and that I had blocked my success in a number of different ways, that began as an obsession really 25 years ago, working with clients, but also working with myself and exploring every modality I could to get the answers that I needed, because a lot of the traditional approaches were brilliantly helpful, but they still didn't kind of get to the core of it. And so I was like, there's something missing, and I went in search for that missing piece, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But for me, that's really been my passion, and it's understanding that I truly believe in what I've experienced. My life was turned around by a single event, epiphany moment. And so I am walking evidence that your life can be changed in an instant. And yes, there was still a lot of laundry to do, a lot of unpacking, a lot of unpicking to be done. But still, I had a paradigm shift in that one moment. So I'm obsessed with the idea that in any moment, on any day, someone can just have a switch from which their life will never be the same again. And that, to me, is just a fascinating opportunity every day. And if I can be involved in engineering that, or at least making it more likely, I'm a happy man.
I'm a big believer in that. Most people don't understand that change happens in an instant. It's just the process to get to that change, right? Like it's fascinating. You can remember the second, but I'm sure if we actually went back, we would have to go through years and steps and all this stuff to get to that one moment in time. But enough of the build-up. What was the moment in time?
Straight to that. Okay, I'm happy to share that story. Why not? It usually comes out anyway, but I'll give you the pre-seed version. But essentially, I up until 27, I was a lost character. I didn't know I was lost. I thought I was having a great time. I was a hedonist. I was kind of searching for happiness in all the wrong places, in all the wrong ways, but I didn't know that. I thought I was having a great time. I mean, I was wearing oversized silver jewelry and trying to convince myself I was enjoying smoking cigars, which I don't think I managed to convince myself. But I didn't have any deeper purpose or deeper meaning in my life. It was all about pleasure, and it was all about me. and it was all about wild and varied experiences. And as part of that, as the millennium the Millennium New Year's Eve was on the horizon, this is 1999, one of my first kind of really powerful kind of like big changing experiences when I was 18, 19 was spending time in Goa in India, going to the psychedelic raves that would happen there, the big free psychedelic raves with thousands of people. And this was part of what really confirmed me as a hedonist. So I was deep in that scene, and when I came back to England, I went into the party scene, and that was my life. Now, as the millennium was on the horizon, I didn't want that New Year's Eve to be disappointing. You know how New Year's Eve can be disappointing sometimes, right? So I was like, no, I've got to go big. I've got to make sure this has got the best chance. I don't want to see in a millennium the next 1,000 years mutely, you know? So I decided to head to Goa, not for any spiritual reasons. India for me was just a place that had epic parties. But India had different plans. And when I was there, I had an experience which led to me, changing my life. So the summary of that experience, now I've given you the context. As I said, I was brought up in a very loving home, but a passionately atheistic household. So my father was a passionate atheist, not remotely agnostic. And so I was brought up to believe anyone with any kind of faith or religious beliefs was ridiculous. You know, he was incredibly judgmental, and I had borrowed from that philosophy. And so when I went to India and I saw all these wandering holy men, you know, the idea of them that they will work for love and truth, and wherever they go, they'll be blessed, they'll be looked after, they'll be taken care of. I was just like, I had respect for it. I thought they were deluded, but I had respect for it. But I thought to myself, that's only possible in a country so steeped in such spiritual superstition, so very judgmental. But I'd gone to the New Year's Eve party, and it had been a very, very big party, and I ended up dancing all night, and I danced till the sun rose, and at that time that was fairly common, but I kept dancing until the sun went down, and when I finally stopped dancing, I danced for about 17 hours. 17 hours. And we'd driven around the night before to try and find the best party, and we'd actually ended up driving to one which was just around the corner from my hotel. And when I left, finally, my bike was in a sea of other motorbikes, and I couldn't even make it out. And I was exhausted anyway. So I stumbled back to my hotel, and I expected I was going to sleep for like a week. I was exhausted. And but I was very surprised to wake after maybe 5 or 6 hours. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning. And I could hear the party still going off in the distance. And I just couldn't believe the party was still going and who was still dancing. And I was starving. I mean, I was absolutely starving. And I decided to go back to the party to get a cup of tea, you know, maybe have, you know, there are these chai mamas that sit around the edges of the party, and they set up these little stalls, sell cakes and biscuits and chai. And I thought, you know what, I'll just go chill, have a kind of pre-breakfast snack. And anyway, when I walked in there, it had been maybe 2,000, 3,000 person party in the middle of the night. But by this point, it had thinned down. And there's maybe a couple of hundred people left dancing, right? And I was really surprised to see one of these Indian holy men sat on one of these chai mats, just taking it all in. And I was just like, wow, what does he make of this, right? What does he make of this? And I was kind of fascinated by him, and I felt this real compulsion to go and talk to him. Now, I understand intuition now. I run my life by these intuitive insights, but at the time, I was dull to those things. But I think something about me having danced so much and had cleared myself out, I was super present, super sober, and I just had this really strong compulsion to go and talk to him. And he was sat at a chai mat, and I wanted tea, so I went down, I sat down. He said hello with that brilliant, beautiful, just slight head wobble, you know? And I ordered a cup of tea. But it wasn't really easy to strike up a conversation. It just didn't seem available. I don't know. I was sitting there going, what am I going to say? And I was trying to work out what I was trying to get from this situation. But I definitely felt I was meant to be there. And I definitely felt something was meant to happen. Now, that might feel normal to someone like yourself. But at the time, that kind of sensation was really novel for me. I didn't have any kind of tuning in that way, but I definitely felt I was meant to be there. Anyway, I hadn't been sat there very long, and the woman who was running this little chai stall started in Hindi to have a right go. Like, she started shouting basically at this holy man, which is unusual because people usually treat them with great respect. And I don't speak Hindi, but the gist I got was she was saying something like, this is my guess, right? You've been here for hours. You guys are known for having no possessions, no money, right? You've had 5 teas and 2 cakes. Like, what's the plan? The party's winding down. When are you going to pay me, right? And he just wobbled his head slightly. He didn't say a word. And she kind of scowled and then carried on, cooking her tea or whatever. And then it dawned on me in that moment, in a way that I knew with such absolute certainty in that moment, that I was there to pay for his tea. I wasn't there to get praise. I wasn't there to get thanks. I had to do it anonymously. My job was to take care of this character. And I was like, what? Like, what? I'm not saying I wouldn't normally be charitable, but this was a different kind of instruction. And I was like, and so I smoked then, and I put like enough money, there are a few cigarettes and some stuff he might like to smoke, because they like to smoke, those guys, and a bunch of money, equivalent of $10, enough if he'd had 100 teas in India, right? He was fine. And I was able to put it in front of him in a way where he'd find it in a minute, for sure, but it was really important. It was not about me getting praise. Anyway, I paid my tea and I left. And as I left, I was flooded with a release of bliss and dopamine and thank you and yesness, the likes of which I'd never felt before in my whole life. Like, flooded with, you did your job. Mm. And in that instant, Vin, I had scientific evidence that here was someone working for truth and love, totally free in the world, absolutely in faith. A day before, I would have thought an absolutely deluded, superstition-based nonsense. And yet in that moment, I had discovered that he was part of a loving, benevolent field, that if he was going to work for truth and love, he would be provided for. And I knew it in my bones that was true. And in that exact moment, I burst out laughing like it was the funniest, best news I'd ever heard. And exactly the same time, I burst into tears, because my heart broke for the fact that I had operated in my life unaware of the true nature of consciousness, the true nature of reality. And I had created so much stress and struggle in my life unnecessarily. And so it was the weirdest thing. I was honestly laughing uncontrollably and crying uncontrollably at the same time. And it felt really good, but I looked like an absolute nut job. So I wanted to get out there as quick as possible. I jumped on my bike, which I could now find, and I drove up Vagator Hill, which is in North Goa. And I scrambled to the top of this hill, and it's surrounded by sea and palm trees. It's a beautiful view. And I just melted into the oneness. And I had a kind of half-hour oneness experience. And in that moment, I felt connected to all things, all times. And that was it. I knew my life had changed. And I sent an email to my business partner that day. I'm not running clubs anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I've got to work out a way to work for love and truth, because, man, that shit pays, right? Mm. And that was it, really. But what was interesting to me was, even as blissful and as perfect as that paradigm shifting experience was, when I tried to integrate it, when I tried to integrate myself, when I tried to live free, what I realized, my system was still clogged with things that blocked my ability to experience that. That's what led me to understand, what is that state of happiness? What gets in the way? What are the blocks? So I went to study psychology then, not to become a therapist, but to understand contentment. And what was fascinating to me, Vin, and I'm sure you'll confirm this with your psychotherapy training, is if you put psychotherapists and psychiatrists into a room, like thousands of them, and said, tell me your combined hours of training dedicated to human contentment, they'd all look around the room with blank faces. It's like, the training's about dysfunction and pathology and fixing problems and gluing people back together. There was, the understanding of human contentment is a big piece of knowledge. It's a huge body of work. It's really important to know that. They're all in the happiness business. But they haven't actually studied contentment. And they are, many of them, not all, obviously, some of them obviously independently do lots of work on that, but in terms of the technical training. But also, so many people are operating from the idea, let's glue people back together and stick them back out there. Because out there is good and not hacking it is bad. Whereas I kind of believe if you have a really anxious or depressed response to human life, you're probably thinking right. There's a lot out there to be anxious and depressed about. I mean, the state of the world is wild. But obviously you don't want to live in that place. But a natural reaction to the world from that perspective is appropriate, I think. And then you just want to work out how you can recalibrate and how you can find a way to be here and have peace and purpose, And so that's been, my area of obsessive exploration for the last 25 years.
I love it. How old were you when you were at that party in India?
27.
See, what a great testament to just what I said even before, right? Change in an instant, but that change was happening over the course of 27 years. 27 years it took me to learn. When that moment happened, I remembered as well a moment when I was 14 where the universe had reached out to me in a similar way. And I just didn't have the language or the vocabulary or the maturity to understand what was happening. I was just sitting on a rock and I just had this bliss. And I came down and I saw my mum. We were on a holiday and she's like, what's going on with you? And I'm like, I don't know. I just found this really amazing rock. And she's like, well, yeah, you look really alive or lively. And that was it. And I was like, so it waited another 10 years and then tried again. And I was able to hear the message, But that's why most people fail. Not because they're not capable of change, but because they don't take the time it takes. You took 27 years to have a complete change, but it was 27 years in the making. And who knows if you still weren't open to receiving the message. Yeah. You might have had another experience when you were 40. It would have taken 40 years. Yeah, and you're right. And also unpacking it. It's like one of the reasons why I became obsessed with self-sabotage is in that moment of oneness, it was filled with a sense of deep unconditional love, but it was also filled with a sense of the perfection of all, right? That doesn't mean everything's fucking great, right? It doesn't mean that, but it means the system has balance in it. There's a perfect balance to it. Like if you're stupid over here, you'll get smacked about over there. It's not good to get smacked about, but it's connected to being stupid, right? And that works on a national, international level as countries, and it plays out, right? These things play out, right? There's a balance. It can suck, but it sucks for good reasons. So the sense of perfection was vivid. But when I really start getting into my psychology, it's like, but why is there a part of me that seems really motivated to oppose my greatest choices? Why is there a part of me that pushes away compliments? Why is there a part of me that doesn't reach out for what I want to take? Why do I, when reaching out, do it in a way that aggravates others to the point where I mess it up? I saw it enough to know that I was a common denominator, and I was able to locate this part in my psychology that if it could have pushed a button and ruined everything for me, it wanted to. How did that work in a perfect universe? Like, why would I have that? And where did it come from? And how can you fix that? And that's what I've kind of specialized in, because it's really hard. You get so many people who think it's a willpower thing, and they're forcing themselves. And you can do a lot with willpower. You can overcome self-sabotage with willpower, but then it means you have to do it every bloody day. Now listen, if you like getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, doing a gratitude journal, doing an ice bath, meditating, working out, and doing all of that so that you can then get in a positive state to manage your day, okay, like if that works for you and it's joyful, great. Truth is, commonly, that's because those people that are really into that, they're into it in a way, if they don't do it, within 3 days, their mental health falls off a cliff. They're not doing it because it's nice, they're doing it because if they don't, their starting point
is negative and limited and dysfunctional, and they can overcome their self-sabotage, but it means they're going to have to push that rock up a hill every day. I'm like, well, what if we could clear away that self-opposition so you just wake up and you feel super positive and super grateful and super aligned, and then you can get up at 7:30 a.m. and get on with your day,
You mentioned it. It's definitely an interesting topic, and I think a lot of people don't even fully understand it. Self-sabotage. Mm-hmm. I think that most of us, if not all of us, have plenty of moments that come up of self-sabotage, whether it's self-sabotaging a good relationship you might be getting into, business success, a meeting that could lead to something big, hell, even yourself, right? Like, what if you made a commitment to stop watching porn and then all of a sudden you start again? Like, that's still self-sabotage. Why, from your understanding as an expert, why do people, and let's not address the solution yet, but why do people self-sabotage in the first place?
Yep. So, there's a really beautiful and simple kind of explanation for this. And because why we self-sabotage is a bit counterintuitive. And I saw this on a meme a couple of years ago, and I was like, that's it. I mean, that is it. That's it in a nutshell. So I'll share that, and then we'll dive a bit deeper into it. But it said, parents, don't shout at your kids. They won't hate you. They'll hate themselves. And so the reason why, when our needs aren't being met as a child, now that's a scale, that's a continuum, right? You can come from an amazing home with amazing parents, and there'll still be loads of times when your needs weren't met. And my work isn't banging on about your sad childhood story, right? Forever, right? Or wallowing in your victimology, right? I'm not interested in that. But the truth is, you have to understand that our self-sabotage invariably comes from those moments in time when your needs weren't being met by a primary carer, and you have a very basic algebra. You can either be, I'm disappointed in the person I'm dependent upon, right? Which no child wants to think, right? Not out of loyalty, but out of, if the thing I'm dependent on isn't good and safe and right, I'm in trouble here, right? So that's too destabilizing. So the kind of survival rule is to believe that my carers are good and right and safe, no matter how they're behaving. And yet if they neglect us, or they shout at us, or they're not interested in us, or they're not being present with us, or worse, are abusive, then we take comfort in blaming ourselves rather than blaming them. It gives us protection from something that would be even more scary, that our carers aren't dependable or good, right? So that is the beginning of a department in our psychology. Now, some people, traditional psychologists, psychotherapists, often will equate that with a self-esteem issue. You didn't get enough support or love or care, therefore you don't value yourself enough. It's like, that's true in part, but no, it's darker than that. Now, there's a part inside you that took comfort in you being a piece of shit, because that meant they were cool. And that's more important to you as a kid. But that means that psychology needs to prove that you're no good. And so you can't get good grades. You can't apply yourself at school. You can't, no, let's leave everything to the last minute. What about that person who would love you and adore you and be stable and consistent? No, that doesn't fit my narrative of my worth. I'm going to lust after that person that won't call me back, won't treat me with respect, or is an absolute nut job, who will be horrible to me, Right. The simplest indicator of predictor, if you have a self-sabotage pattern, so if you're watching this or listening to this, is how you receive a compliment. Because there's no reason not to receive a compliment. Now, some people have got better at doing it externally. They pretend to receive it, right? They're polite, right? But often internally they think someone's just sucking up to them or flattering them or has an agenda. Or externally people go, oh, they credit their team, or they literally sidestep the compliment. But if compliments make you feel uncomfortable, you want to look at that. A self-esteem issue, we just don't feel good about ourselves. A self-sabotage issue, we don't want to feel good about ourselves. So watching porn when we said we're not going to, perfect. Because then we can go, I'm a piece of shit. Having the extra biscuit when you said you weren't going to have any biscuits, perfect. Within the kind of Christian tradition, they say the devil wins twice, right? You eat the biscuit, which feels shit, and then you hate yourself for eating the biscuit, right? That's, the saboteur is interested in that. The behavior is a tool for self-loathing, right? It's not a self-esteem issue. And that's really important. It's really important because so much of the treatment out there tries to go to fixing a self-esteem issue.
Right. And there's a third way the devil wins, right? Because after you eat the biscuit, break your covenant with yourself, and feel like crap, you probably also call yourself a fat shit. You're like, you fat bastard. How dare you?
Identity. Fat and also no control, weak.
Right.
You know, it's just the devil's just sitting back, just, you know, dipping biscuits in his tea, just going, this is just so sweet, right?
I love it. I'm sure that, listen, I don't think there's anybody who doesn't have some sort of a self-sabotage behavior. I've never personally met one, whether it's been in my professional work or in my personal life. But I think it also, because of the fact that it comes back to your needs being met, there's never going to be a time that your parents have met all of your needs. No. So I think it's probably safe to say everybody's got some form of self-sabotage, right?
Yeah. But 100% to some degree. Some people can, with willpower, and drive themselves beyond it, and they can use it to drive them to success, but not necessarily a success that makes them happy, not one that they can sustain without losing their health, right? But it's interesting because even if you had perfect parents, like enlightened parents who never put one foot wrong, you would still grow up with self-sabotage issues, because being human, it's like developing, being squashed out of a womb, coming into the world, not knowing the language, you know, that's fraught with tension. And, you know, sometimes you say no to your 4-year-old because they want to, you know, run in the road. So you say no, they feel you haven't met their needs. That's and you're like, well, it's because you don't understand what's going on, kid. But that kid is still walking around with, my dad let me down. And he will have a legitimate experience of that and need to process that to be free of any sabotage patterns that might be built around that. And yet, as a dad, you weren't failing them. You were protecting them from being hit by a car, right? So it's always interesting. So often people's parents freak out when their child or adult child goes to therapy, that they've made some terrible mistakes. It's like, you definitely have, because we all do. And also, it's even if there's no way of doing it in a way where there isn't some benefit from getting your head looked at and working through some of these things, you know, because actually it doesn't have to take a long time. You know, I don't subscribe to the model that you need to be banging on about it in therapy for years. You know, that's why there is great beauty to talking therapies and talking things through and getting support. Of course, I'm not negating that. But to create real change around self-sabotage, there's a very different set of things that you need to do, and they have to be done in a very specific order. Otherwise, you get one of those things where you get a good result in traditional therapy, where they're like, wow, I'm sabotaging 50% less. This is a result. I'm making twice as much money. My relationship is no longer as conflictual. The therapist and the client are high-fiving each other like they've had a great success. And it's like, well, that's an improvement. But you haven't solved self-sabotage at the core level. And that has to be done in a very specific way.
So before we get into what those big specifics are, I'm definitely curious. Now, there's two things that come to mind. One, I feel like I hear in self-sabotage that there is a component of people going back into their emotional homes, the places that they feel the most comfort with for those of you listening that don't understand, I'm explaining it to you, not my good friend Tom here. He probably understands this pretty well. But the emotional home being where people go to as a default emotion to keep them safe and protected. So one is, do you have to identify the emotional home when it comes to breaking self-sabotage habits? And then part two of the question is, if someone is doing things right on paper, but they're still completely stuck, what would that look like?
Yeah, I think I agree that people have default emotional states that they hide within. People also have normalized beliefs. So one of the ways we defend against pain when we're younger, let's say a parent's inconsistent or a parent is cruel, we can be in the truth of that and be like, wow, I'm disappointed in my parents, therefore I feel really unsafe existentially, right? So we don't do that. We might then tell ourselves it's normal, right? It's normal. Relationship is painful, people are unstable. So then we're driven unconsciously to choose people that will repeat that pattern. and we'll build an emotional home where we've normalized the discomfort of our childhood, and we're imprisoned within a repeating pattern of that. So that is something I've seen is really common. And I think there is a lot of ways in which some people are still high performing. They're doing everything right, and yet they just, the evidence is in their internal state of peace.
Sure.
People have done everything right, and they're earning the money, and they've got the house, they've got the kids, they've got everything, and there's nothing. I'm not saying this about people who hate their work and they're just doing it for the cash. I mean, they could even be in incredibly fulfilling roles, and yet there's just this gnawing, hollow, empty feeling that they're dragging around with themselves, where actually their self-sabotage just won't let them enjoy it. When that happens, one common symptom of that, Vin, is someone has what I call a kind of a pet negative habit. So I worked with a guy once. He's like a working class guy. He'd made good. He was doing very, very well. Company worth millions. And he just couldn't, it just didn't fit his internal barometer for his identity. He couldn't just be the guy that had been successful. So he had this really unenjoyable cocaine habit. And by unenjoyable, I mean he wasn't going out and having fun and, with his friends and having a laugh, or, it's like he would just be sitting in his bedroom, just doing it by himself, feeling terrible about himself. So when he'd be going out his day and his cousins would be like, oh, you're really successful. Internally, he'd be like, yeah, but you don't know. I have this bad hidden habit, and that makes me a bad person. So he could almost allow his success as long as he had this pocket, shameful behavior, So it often turns up like that.
Have you noticed, like, I work with a lot of high-performing people. You work with a lot of high-performing people. What have you noticed maybe being as a common theme amongst some of the higher performing people in society that maybe others wouldn't think they have as a recurring problem or issue?
Yeah, in my kind of experience, there are three primary limiting beliefs, and the one that's the most common is I'm not good enough. And so most of the really driven people, the people who I've worked with who are insanely successful, and I use that phrase rightly, insanely successful, are driven powerfully by not feeling good enough.
Yep.
And therefore, it is a very powerful tool for driving you to prove the world wrong and to make your mark on the world and to make your money. But of course, no amount of external things will satisfy. And so these are the people who they've done everything and they're still just not satisfied. And I see that's more common, which is why, the research showing that 60% of founders, when they've had big exits, 7, 8, 9-figure exits, 60% of them are depressed within 6 months. It's like, that's terrible and unnecessary. And then people say, well, money doesn't make you happy, and that's not fair on money. If you're happy, money amplifies your happiness. But if you're unhappy, money won't fix the problem.
I gotcha. I agree with that. So why don't we start getting into a little bit of what do people do if they want to start working on their limiting beliefs or their self-sabotaging beliefs?
Yeah.
Now that they've identified it, now they have an idea of what it is, what's the next step?
So I'm going to share with you the most important step that I think, right? And this is the bit that I think is missing in a lot of the models out there. And it's a painful part, but it's a really important part, and it's the best step. So I work with the concept I call the innocent self. Some people it's interchangeable with other terms like the inner child, but for me, inner child, it just sounds naff to me, and it puts off a lot of the men that I work with. So, I love the concept of the innocent self. And connecting us to the fact that actually when we were being let down, it really wasn't our fault. Now, a lot of traditional therapy will do that kind of work, and you'll go and meet with your younger self and you'll say, hey kid, listen, I'm really sorry. That sucked. It wasn't your fault. Yeah. And then you say, listen, come home with me. I'm going to look after you. By the way, we've got cats. And by the way, we were firemen and we've done cool things and life's been turned around. And the inner child's like, cool, you sound great. I'll go home with you. Right. Now, the problem with that is that makes people feel a hell of a lot better. Like a hell of a lot better. That will improve self-esteem. It will improve emotional regulation. And if you do only that in your life, you're going to have better relationships. You're going to be more successful, right? That's great. The problem with that is it misses something and it leaves a lot on the table. And what it doesn't do is shift the self-sabotage patterns that you might have. What you have to do before that phase is you have to create space and time for that younger version of you to admit the truth, to admit that it was disappointed. That's what restores its innocence. That's what dissolves the self-saboteur's need to perpetuate the narrative that you're a piece of shit, that you're the problem. Because you can do all that. So what people rush to first, and particularly in therapy, and particularly in spiritual communities, is forgiveness, context. Your parents didn't know any better. They, did the best that they could, all of this very rational forgiveness stuff, which is great. You get to that later. But the first thing, you need to create space, not for you as an adult to be unreasonable, but for the child within, the innocent self, to go, hold on a minute, and actually feel the fury, feel the rage, feel the disappointment, feel the sadness. If you can feel that, that's the only reason you blamed yourself. That's the beginning of self-sabotage. So if you can go to that cleanly and purely, there's no need for self-sabotage. Now, to be able to do that, you have to get past the gatekeeper. And the gatekeeper is what I call the protector. And the protector is the part of your psychology that decides what you can and cannot handle at the time when it happens. It's the part that goes, too much, depress, repress, deny, squash it down. So it's fine for me to say, go connect with your younger self and create space for it to connect to specific memories of being let down and feel the honest truth that you were disappointed in them and it wasn't your fault. In order to do that, you usually need to negotiate with the protector, the gatekeeper. So that's learning how to be able to go and speak to that part in your mind. And you can do it just by imagine sitting down with some security guard or, security general or doorman, or they can appear in any number of different ways, sometimes visually, sometimes physiologically. You get a sense of them in your heart or whatever. And you have to kind of go, something goes a bit like this. It's like, listen, thank you for protecting me from this bullshit. Thank you for blaming me. Oh, by the way, thanks for pushing away that opportunity with that amazing relationship. Thank you for pushing away that money. I made that money and I frittered it away. You have been amazing. I mean, that sabotage skill you got. And the saboteur is like, oh, you understand me finally. I've been on your side. It's like, yeah, you have been messing me up royally, costing me fortunes, costing me drama. Well, you made me go for that girl or that guy instead of that one. I could have had so much just ease and bliss over here, but no, I went for this fucking trauma show over here. It's like, yeah, that was all me. It's like, and instead of fighting it and using willpower to try and overcome your crapness, you sit down with that part of you and you sincerely thank it. It's like, I get you were trying to help, because you didn't think I could handle the truth. And you know what? When I was 5, I probably couldn't have. But now, I'm going to find that kid and I'm going to let him know it wasn't his fault. And I'm going to burst his denial and help him actually admit the truth. And that piece is game-changing.
I've noticed a lot of people, when you start getting into that process, it's so ingrained that they want to defend. Like, it's the first thing, right? There's so many times I'll have those conversations with people. Yeah. And they'll be like, my dad had a lot of anger and he was short with me and he hit me on occasion and but he was great. That was occasionally, he really wasn't a bad guy. And right now he's the greatest and me and my dad are best friends. And we've done so much work on our relationship and he's awesome and I love it. And we're, I couldn't live without my dad. He's the best. And I'm just like, dude, you could acknowledge he fucking sucked sometimes as a dad. It's okay. It doesn't, moments in time don't have to negate experiences as a whole.
That's beautiful.
And it's such an interesting thing because I think that's the inner kid coming back out, right? It's my dad is still the greatest. My dad is awesome.
100%. And it's interesting because I work with clients who've done a lot of therapy and they will be able to say as an adult, oh no, I was really let down. Now some won't. That even as the adult, they'll say that, right? But it's so interesting because even if they can say it conversely in their speaking mind, in the talking part of the session, when I take them into the more meditative, hypnotic process, and then I get them to embody as their younger self, and I say, now say, I'm disappointed in my dad. And you'll see them literally do this. Almost bite their own lips closed. Sure. Because they just can't say the words. I even say to them, you know what, just say the words. You don't even need to believe it. You don't even need to believe it. Just say the words. And they're like, I'm like, say the words. And they say the words and it's huge. huge as the child. That's the key, and you're absolutely right. It's amazing to see. Sometimes I'll even provoke them a little bit. I'll be critical of a parent, and just to see them jump up defensively, and it's like, yeah, they could have been great, and there were times when they weren't, and you have to. What did you make that mean about who you are and how people are in those moments? Because those formative moments end up defining us. It's wild.
Man, it's such an important topic that so many people just don't understand. Because here's the reality. I think objectively, none of us could ever say that we have the greatest parents. Like when I have people that are like, oh, I didn't have issues with my childhood. Like my home was good. I'm like, you're full of shit. Listen, it's not that you have to be extremely dysfunctional, right? But like we were just talking about, there's going to be times where you're just not going to get your needs met because your needs as a child sometimes are just unreasonable. My daughter was having a full-on tantrum last night. We were out to dinner, heaving and crying and like screaming for me to help her because she made a mess on the table, throwing sugar packets everywhere. And I said, you're going to clean this up. Yeah. You made this mess. We've mentioned it to you multiple times. We do not want you making this mess. I've helped you before. I'm not doing it this time. I need your help. Please help me. Yeah, when I get home. We're not moving until you do it all yourself. And she cried and she screamed and she snotted and she did this and she did all of that. And then you know what's really funny, Tom? At the end of it, as she was still crying, she said, I want uppies. I was like, you want it from mom? She's like, you. I'm like, it's fine. But like, that was also interesting to me, right? She still wanted my comfort, even though I was disciplining her.
Yeah, well, in my experience, if I can hold the line whilst my kids are trying to push back against that line, if I can hold steady, lovingly hold tight to a commitment that we've made that they've ideally agreed to, but then they're letting themselves down, if I can, then they like jump. They know it's pure goodness for their soul. They hate it, and they will push against it. But if you can hold it, they know that what you're doing is right for them. But it's just uncomfortable for their inner wild child. But it's beautiful that you did that. It's so good.
Yeah. So, Tom, I'm curious. You and I think we have this very similar thought process, and maybe this is even a little bit of a nice controversial hook for some content, but what do you think about traditional therapy? Do you feel like it's causing more harm than good for the average person?
I think there's a lot wrong with the principles upon which that industry was built, and therefore I think I am endlessly impressed and inspired by the people within the industry for what they're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And yet I think it's institutionally corrupted at a core level by some principles laid down by some people from a long, long time ago about what change is, where it comes from, and how to facilitate it. And I think it's disruptive. I think a lot of people are fed up with the idea that you have to talk to someone for ages that doesn't point out to you what the hell is going on, that you have to spend 7 years talking about it because they couldn't possibly direct you, because it has to be your discovery. And it's like, well, that's true if you're working at the conscious mind, but you can't just get straight into the unconscious and do loads of really deep work to help people like rearrange their belief systems. And that's just rapid, and people need rapid change. And for everyday people, most of them can't even afford it. So it's doing damage because they think, I can't even start. A lot of people are resistant to therapy, not because they're anti-therapy, but because they're anti-opening something that might mean they don't have the resources to complete.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think, and there's also this buy-in too, that, you've promoted that change can happen quickly. Mm-hmm. You've promoted that, the work that you do, and I'm in agreement, by the way, I'm not saying this in an accusatory way, but you've promoted that the work that you do can provide better results than years and years of therapy. And I agree. I mean, I talk the same about the industry. Yeah. What do you think is that biggest crux that, the standard right now is that you go to therapy for 10 years, you never learn how to solve your issues, and that's just a norm. But what do you think is the biggest crux that most people are missing, or maybe most practitioners are missing, that is helping people get faster results? Do you think it's just because they believe the system that's been built, or do you think it's because they lack a certain skill set or training?
Yeah, I mean, I think I cannot imagine creating change for my clients without engaging the unconscious directly. I just can't. I just honestly, what happens often in talking therapy is people develop a really clear intellectual cerebral understanding of why they're dysfunctional, but they remain dysfunctional, which I think is honestly worse. Because then you can't blame it. You're left in the middle. You know it's you, and it doesn't really shift very much. That's really painful. So I don't understand why talking therapists wouldn't add to their skill sets NLP, hypnotherapy, the tools that enable you to get in there. Now, the truth is shifts can happen really fast, but the work is ongoing and endless, and it's not like you can be enlightened in an afternoon, but you can have paradigm shifting experiences that set you in a different path insanely rapidly. And some things can be resolved like insanely quickly. So if someone's been working for years on someone's phobia, then that's just bullshit. I mean, it's honestly bullshit. With the tools and techniques out there now, there's something corrupt about that. They're just being used to heat their pool. And if, and you have a responsibility, I think, as a practitioner, to at least once a year imagine that your thinking and your tools and your training are limited. Because everyone's in an echo chamber. They've got their methodologies and they've got their practices, and then the people it don't work for, they just evaporate away. And then you have the people it works for, and they're your cheerleaders, and you pat yourself on the back, and it's just so much bias.
I'm in complete agreement. I absolutely love it. A lot of modern day therapy is just sitting there, focusing on the same thing over and over and over, and just shedding light on the same damn thing. And it's so bright and shiny, and it's like, I get a great idea. Let's keep sharing it, the bright, shiny thing. We're not actually going to do anything with it, but we'll just watch how nice and glowy it is. And it's like, what the hell are we doing? So yeah. I love that there are more people like you, like myself, that are really out here attempting to change the standards and change the industry. And it's so refreshing. And that's how I know you're a great coach. And that's why I wanted you on the podcast, because I'm frequently, you could go back and listen to old episodes. I'm like, most coaches are shit. I hate all coaches. A lot of them suck. And I don't even want to talk to them because I think that they're just perpetuating bullshit. So I would definitely not give them a platform. So every time I meet a good coach, I'm like, you should come on my podcast. I want to highlight you more. So I'm glad that you're one of them, Tom. I have a few more questions because we're almost done. We got to get wrapping. But I got about 3 or 4 more questions for you because we're coming up here. So I have a fun question. I think this is going to be an interesting one. You're a pantheist. That's how you identify, correct? Yeah. So for those of you that don't fully understand that meaning, it doesn't mean he's from the pantheon like Greek mythology. It means that he understands that God is everything. Yeah. So with that belief, I got this question for you. If God is everything, including that one client who just won't freaking change, how do you stay patient with them?
I charge enough to be happy no matter what. Pantheism is a source of patience for sure. The belief that everything is part of the divine, but it's the paradox of recognizing that everything is the ocean, but we have these distinct waves within the ocean, and a wave has a beginning, has an ending, has a job to do, and that is us. We are both the wave and the ocean. So I am in a dualistic relationship with the divine as a separate entity, and yet I know every aspect of my existence is filled with the divine. So I'm just at the thick end of the intelligence field, right? But it's me, but my ability to tap into it is there. And so that does give me comfort in the face of difficult characters, for sure.
I love it. And is that a part, you mentioned a practice of contentment. Is that a part of a practice of contentment, of knowing that kind of everything is happening and flowing and it's all oneness? Or would you say that contentment's a little different?
Yeah, well, I mentioned there are 3 limiting beliefs. So my work essentially is moving people from 3 limiting beliefs to the 3 liberated beliefs. And those 3 liberated beliefs, I'll share them very briefly. Sure. They're what enable you to be content, happy, and successful. So the limiting beliefs are, I'm not okay as I am. The next one is, the answer to my problems is outside of me. And the third one is the atheistic position of, I'm a pointless nothing in a meaningless universe. So my work with clients is about connecting to them. I'm perfect as I am. I have everything I need within me. And I'm a unique and important part in a connected, loving universe.
Love it.
You rebuild those 3 beliefs, you will have more success, you'll have more contentment no matter what's happening.
I absolutely love that. Okay, well, I guess I have an idea of how you're going to answer these next questions, because the next two are the big ones for the show here. So we are the Marked Podcast. Reason being is that there's always a mark that's left when you build something, and there's a mark that usually most of us want to leave if we're building something. So those questions are going to be posed to you in this sense of, what is the mark that you are aiming to leave on the world? And as you've been building something that is different and better and a little bit more unique, and clearly you're mission driven, you're an entrepreneur, what is the mark that has been left on you? Because building usually does leave us with something as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think my name being Thomas, and the fact I was such a cynic, I was the archetypal doubting Thomas. And it was only when I saw it with my own eyes, when I saw the interconnected nature of consciousness and the balance within it, I saw it. And then I was like, oh, this is science now. And so for me, yes, if you spoke to my clients, they would describe me as a trauma therapist, because you've got to clear the decks of all the trauma to get to the place of freedom. But really, I'm the oneness guy. I want people to realize that once you get beyond your fear, all you feel is love and connection. Like, that's the beauty of it. I'm not a trauma therapist. I'm a oneness and connection dude. You just need to shovel a lot of snow to get to that particular cabin. The mark it's left on me, truth is, been having this breakthrough, having this life-changing epiphany, 26 years ago. It's been really hard, because I just wanted everyone to get how wrong I was and how helpful this is. And it has not been an easy path for me. I've had many, many moments where I thought, I'm on my way. I can really broadcast this message. I've had books published. I was invested in, and we built an app. And in many ways, lots of things didn't work, and they didn't work at the scale I was hoping. And I think, had I had earlier success, I think I would have become inflated and egotistical and arrogant and destructive. And I think it's been brutal, and I think it was ironing out all that bullshit so that I can actually bring something to the world that isn't going to go on to cause more trouble. And I'm not flippant about that, because my heart has been broken along this entrepreneurial path many times. And it's been way, way harder than I was expecting. And if I had known how hard it was going to be, I wouldn't have done it. And so I'm humbled by it, really, really profoundly humbled. And I think that was the point. I think I would have taken great pride in my achievements. Now I do not. I know that it's down to an awful lot of factors that I'm part of, but there are bigger things at play.
Man, I feel the same way. I think entrepreneurship is one of the most difficult things I've ever done. And in the hardest days, we fantasize about leaving it. I joke around. I'm like, man, some days when life is really hard, I'm like, wouldn't it be great to just work at like Dick's Sporting Goods and get like a bunch of discounted gym gear and like just enjoy life and have no responsibility? But it's that thing too, is like, you're already on the ride. You could get off, but you don't want to, because you're like, man, I've come all this way. I refuse to quit. But your car is all dinged up.
Yeah, my car is all dinged up. And, I just keep waking up with ideas,
Yeah.
I just keep waking up with ideas. Damn it. I just like go, wow, that's beautiful. I'm just about to launch a kind of like micro rave, like conscious celebration, which is a combination of all my work with music and psychology to get people into a state of deep euphoria, just for the sheer fun. And then it's just like, oh, and it's got legs and it's kind of moving, and it's like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Love that. Well, Tom, this has been an absolutely amazing episode. I'm hoping that the listeners got just as much value out of it as I did. So I sure learned a lot today. And really just thank you so much for being here, coming and, swimming across the ocean to show up. Like, we appreciate you.
Oh, my pleasure, Ben, and thank you. It's great questions, and it's lovely to see your understanding of all this stuff is brilliant. So well done, and love your work, and I love what you stand for and how you stand for it. So more power to your elbow, sir.
So Tom, last question before we end up for today. please, can you tell people if they wanted to reach out, how could they get connected? Where could they find you? Where should they go? And what should they do?
Yeah, so my website is tomfortismayor.com. Or what would really serve me, and the probably simplest way to get hold of my kind of contact details, is to buy my book that is going to be out now by the time this podcast comes out, which is called Don't Fuck Up Your Life. And it's all about a deep dive into why we get in our own way, and why we don't need to.
I'm sold. Everybody should buy that book, including myself. So let me know when it launches. I'll get the first copy.
Thank you.
I want the autograph, though. It has to be signed or I'm sending it back. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Marked Podcast. I'm your host, Vin. That was my friend, Tom. Please don't forget to like, share, follow, subscribe. Send this to someone who's self-sabotaging. Let them know that there are solutions, and they're all right here in the form of this gentleman with an amazing accent. Please check out his book, and don't forget to tune in for the next episode. I'll see you all later. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.